Hi, guys, and welcome back to whatever the hell this is. I have no idea what's going on. I'm just gonna jump right into it. In that moment, I realized it was a trap. I couldn't believe it myself, which is why I hadn't suspected it at all before. The car appeared to be empty, but there was the figure of a single person inside. Aoi Senna was sitting cross-legged on a burgundy train seat. Her sharp gaze was fixed firmly on me. For some reason, she was holding a light blue popsicle in her hand. That was Crunchy-kun, right? Forget it. I couldn't care less about Crunchy-kuns right now. More importantly, the gigantic D sword she had been carrying was mysteriously nowhere to be found. I wondered where she had even managed to put the thing, with how huge it was and all. It's clearly her popsicle, you idiot. Up. Got another delusion. Delusion time. Okay, so this one is going to be positive. In place of the sword was a white chain coiling around one of her legs, which reminded me that back when I'd first met her in Center Guy, she had said something about finding her in a train car in front of the station. This must have been what she'd meant. I'd honestly completely forgotten about that. Was she the one who put this chain here? Could she really have been lugging around such a long chain? It looked like it weighed over 10 kilograms. And not only that, but it had to have been over 50 meters long. I had no idea what was up with this girl. She was entirely unknown to me. She wasn't normal. Could she be Shogun? I mean, she doesn't look like a weird, small, wheelchair bound old man to me, does she? Feeling scared now, I moved to run away without saying anything. Only for a sharp voice to strike me right then.
入れ。
I automatically stopped dead in my tracks. Thoughts ran through my head frantically. If I ran away, what would she do? Would she swing her D-sword at me while she chased me? When I tried to envision it happening, it freaked me out way too much, so I hurriedly shook the delusion out of my head. Conversely, what if I were to just walk straight in instead? She would get a much better impression of me, and maybe then she wouldn't be so violent. Maybe she'd even be in a good enough mood, but she'd be interested in selling her D-sword to me. Highly doubtful. I didn't think that she'd give it up that easily, but maybe I could at least get her to tell me where she bought it from. On top of that, she seemed to have been waiting for me. In other words, that meant she'd taken some form of interest in me. She looked scary, but was as often the case with tsundere types. She must have actually been pretty nice in reality. I don't know, she comes off more as a kudere to me. That's cool. Like a popsicle. It could just be wishful thinking, though. Then again, it wasn't like I was going to get cold just because I went inside. Surely that was true. We were right in the middle of Shibuya after all, right in front of the Hachiko statue. There were tons of people surrounding us. Killing me in public, in front of all of them, would have been suicide. I took a single deep breath, gathered my resolve, and then I stepped onto the train. I suddenly realized the bundle of chain that had been at Senna's feet just a moment ago had disappeared without a trace. thought that she'd moved it somewhere, but there had been no sound to indicate that, and she was still sitting on the same seat she'd been sitting on the entire time. Even if she had moved it, where the hell had she moved it to? I didn't see it anywhere on the train.
エラーはどこにあった？
Senna, completely unconcerned with how lost I was, asked me something unintelligible yet again.
だから私をつけてきたんじゃないのか？
As I shook my head left and right in confusion, Senna's expression became increasingly stern. She then eventually looked away from me, let out a small sigh, and took a bite of her popsicle. A bite? My goodness, this woman is hardcore. Oh man, you better not mess with her, Takumi. Freed from her sharp gaze, I nearly sank down to the floor once again. Talk about looks that could kill. And licks that could certainly happen if she was eating that right. I would have sat down on one of the seats if I could have. When I realized that she might have said something to me if I did, I couldn't bring myself to.
お前が私をつけてきているのには気づいていた。私が作ったエラーが見えていただろう。
だからエラーって何？
鎖だ。白い鎖。
If that was what she meant, then yeah, I'd seen it. I'd followed the weird thing all the way here after all.
でもどこにもない。消えたよ。
消した。私の妄想だから。
You know, you're kinda lucky that he came this direction and not the other direction. Delusion? What is she talking about?
じゃあケンは？
お前も持っているだろう。
Excuse me? No, I don't have one. How could I? This wasn't going well. I could barely get a word out.
それより、お前は何者なんだ？見えているみたいだけど。
は？
Senna glanced at me, then jerked her chin toward the window.
この窓の外に何が見える？
People. Lots of people. I felt like there were even more people than before. I felt like I was going to get a headache just from looking at them. There were people with their heads glued to their cell phones, people smiling over phone calls, people standing and staring at the stream of people. Practically everything I saw out the window was people standing around waiting for other people. I mean, if there were so many people here, why hadn't anyone come into the train since I had gotten on?
完璧な世界がそこにあると思うか？あるはずがない。エラーは確かに存在する。すべてのものは人も含めて電気仕掛けだからな。
What kind of chuny plotline was that? Jokes aside, I also thought about similar things pretty often. I'm telling you, she's your sister. And I wasn't trying to say that chuny plotlines were bad or anything. After all, the world was overflowing with books, movies, and anime that were nothing but chuny insanity. Why was it that a writer or a movie director or whoever else could come up with chuny plotlines like that and it was all well and good, but when amateurs like me did it, everyone made fun of us? The world's greats had all been chunibyos. Just think about it. The Wright brothers had genuinely thought that they could fly through the sky 100 years ago. Napoleon had boasted that the word impossible is not in my dictionary. That was why chunibyos weren't something to be mocked. It was the path that all of the world's greats had taken. Ah, yes, I do remember when Napoleon was cursing at his cursed arm. But my question was, why had this girl suddenly started spouting all this chuny shit at me?
何を見ているかじゃない。何を見せられているか。人は体の外からの情報を五感によって得ているけど、その受け取る情報のおよそ 80% は視覚から入ってくる。そして視覚から得られた映像はパルス信号となって視神経を通り脳に送られる。
Just like a telephone, I thought to myself absent-mindedly. A telephone converted your voice into electrical signals, and then sent that information to a distant location.
電話か。似ていると言えなくもない。
Had she just read my mind? No, there was no way. Had I been mumbling to myself without realizing it again?
VR 技術を知っているか。
What, virtual reality? Of course, I didn't actually answer her aloud.
ビジュアルリビルディング。
Huh, I was wrong. I'd never heard of that.
アメリカの精神生理学分野で研究が行われている技術だ。生まれながらに目が不自由な人でも目の前にある景色がちゃんと見えるようになる。ビデオカメラのような映像機器を介してな。
Oh, is she, talking about what I think she's talking about? If I recall correctly, there's one where you can replace your sense of sight with, your tongue. Yeah, a device that you put on your tongue and, it gives you sort of feedback that can replicate the sense of sight. I think a guy climbed Mount Everest using it.
どうやってという顔をしているな。だが仕組みとしては単純な話だ。ビデオカメラが映した映像も脳を流れる神経パルスもどちらも突き詰めれば電気による信号なんだぞ。
Nerve impulse. An electrical signal or stimulus that travels through the nerve cells of an organism. Has the ability to quickly transmit information between tissues.
要は神経パルスにコンバートできる技術さえあればいい。すでに実際にテストは成功している。ある研究チームが特許を取得済みだ。
It was patented? Seriously? I thought that it was just a fairly hardcore delusion with an impressive amount of depth and detail behind it. But claiming there was a full-on patent was taking it way too far.
その特許から読み取れることがある。
Senna, who had been looking out the window the whole time, turned to face me. She slowly crossed her legs.
ある意図的な情報を神経パルスへコンバートすることが可能なら、人の五感すべて、さらには人の意志そのものもコントロールできるんじゃないか。
Even though it was right in front of Shibuya Station, it was strangely quiet on the train. It felt as if it had been deprived of sound itself. It was obviously an illusion, but I couldn't help but remember the delusion I had had several days ago of the deserted Shibuya. As I thought about it, I couldn't take my eyes off the crowd moving outside the window.
さっき言ったように、人は電気仕掛けだ。脳だけじゃなく、全身に張り巡らされている神経にも電気が通っている。つまり、肉体的な動きまでも操れるということになるんだ。理論的にはな。
This girl. I was taken aback. This girl was even more delusional than both me and Yua combined. What she was saying sounded logical, but but it was clearly a total pipe dream.
事実、特許を取得した研究チームもその方向へと研究内容をシフトしている。あまりに危険すぎる内容だったからアメリカ大統領が歯止めをかけようとして行政命令を出したくらい。
How much of what she was saying was actually true?
いかなる機関であろうと政府との事前合意なしに人体の機密の研究を行うことを禁じる。それを支援することも同様である。
Promulgated. May have to look that up later. Common rule. A United States policy clearly defining and regulating research involving human subjects. And stated in 1981, the full title is The Federal Policy for the Protection of Human Subjects. The policy states that all institutions performing experimentation involving human subjects must abide by a specific set of rules, such as obtaining informed consent, properly recording findings, and complying with authority, be it a federal department, agency, or institutional review board. In later subparts, additional protections are provided for pregnant women, children, fetuses, and prisoners. Senna looked downward and clasped her hands, resting on her knees tightly.
だが世の中腐った連中ばかりだ。倫理を無視して自分の利益のためだけに他者を平気で犠牲にするような連中がな。ヘドが出る。
After she finished voicing her disgust, she stuck the last chunk of the nearly melted crunchy coon in her mouth and suddenly stood up. I reflexively started to shrink back, only to run into the wall behind me.
無知は罪だ。知らない方が幸せなこともあるという人間もいるが、そんなのはただの甘えだ。世界を疑え、仕組みを知れ。この世界は完璧じゃない。
She was coming toward me. Thinking she might hit me, I tried to shield my face with my arm, but in the end, she slipped right past me without doing anything.
お前の見ている景色は本物か？
Without looking at me, she murmured that as we passed each other, and then I realized that absolutely nobody outside was even moving. They were all a static image. Also, for some reason, despite the fact that I had decent vision, I could not see very well. Almost like it was intentionally blurred. She promptly exited the train by herself. I stared out the window at Senna as she walked away. Without looking back at me even once, she quickly disappeared into the sea of people. In the end, I had absolutely no clue as to what she'd been trying to tell me. The only thing I took from it was that Senna despised the world. Typical Chinubio. From my point of view, though, it sucked ass to have her shoot her poisonous Denpa bullshit at me without even letting me get a word in. Her tone of voice alone had made me feel like I was being lectured. The way she talked was often a moe characteristic when it came to 2D, but in reality, it only served to make her feel even more like a total Dokyun. But the fact that she hadn't attacked me was a relief. A surprise, considering that, for some reason, she always gave off the aura that she was just raring to slap anyone and everyone. I wanted to take a breather after that, so I sat down on the seat where Senna had been sitting before. Immediately following that, a Dokyun-looking couple suddenly came into the car. After that came a trio of people that were obviously Dokyun Kogyarus, then an older, middle-aged man, and then a young businessman wearing a suit. Gyaru, a Japanese fashion subculture that seeks to rebel against traditional standards of beauty. Often associated with delinquency, Gyarus and their many subgroups explore fashion that is not necessarily considered normal in the eyes of society. For example, Gonguro involves bleached hair, extreme tanning, and an extensive use of makeup. There are also less extreme types, such as Kogyarus, which simply involve wearing school uniforms with very short skirts. The train car had become claustrophobic in the blink of an eye. Before Senna had left, no one had even tried to enter the car, so where the hell had they all come from? The voices of the Dokyun couple and the Kogyarus were way too loud, so I quickly got out of there while telling them all to go to hell in my head. So yeah, that's how I ended up getting tangled up with an IRL Chuny chick. Okay, asshole. Can't try to remember. Okay, asshole, this time you have pissed me off. Seriously, Lord Neidhart, you're always saying shit like, oh, I don't give a fuck about 3D, but you've been getting real nice and close with a bunch of 3D girls recently, haven't you? You even said earlier that one of them broke into your house. I see who you ask. That's straight out of an eroge. You've plunged straight into your life and a lifetime chance to be popular. Alright, listen well. I'll admit that I have indeed amassed quite the number of opportunities to speak with cute females. However, every single IRL one is a fucking mental case. Mental case. A person whose words and actions are very clearly born from insanity, like a certain shut-in. You try being on the receiving end of one of their brain-melting Denpa attacks. Sheer scale of schizo, it's legitimately horrifying. Shiver, shiver. Okay, I truly am sorry. Don't worry about it. Even after I'd gone back home, I'd still been somewhat interested in what Senna had told me. Of course, I didn't think that what she had said was true, but I was pretty sure that I'd be able to confirm it for myself if I did a little bit of research into the patent and the memorandum specifically. So, with Grimm's help, I started searching the internet. I was also able to get one of Grimm's friends who lived in America to help out as well. But even with all that help, I still didn't think we were gonna find anything. In this day and age, you can trust anyone without a source. Yo, I just got a message from Shiho. Shiho was the friend of Grimm's that I had mentioned earlier. He lived in America and spoke fluent English. Let me guess, BS, right? That stupid fucking mental case. She had to have just been making a fool out of me because she didn't think I could understand English. Don't underestimate the power of the internet. Consider yourself pwned. It exists, apparently. It exists. What did? The guy went out of his way to TL it for us. Anyway, let me up it. Is this just more bait? Man, you don't trust me at all, do you, LMAO? Although that's probably my fault for being an ass most of the time, lol. Okay then, how about I invite Shio instead? I'd been tricked by Grimm several times in the past. If I trusted him like I usually did, he'd hit me with something so bad that it'd make my brain blue screen. But he was saying that he was going to invite Shiho, and that he even had a source for us. If this is just you baiting me again, I'll kick you out the guild. KK, trust me just this once. He was being surprisingly confident. Maybe it really was okay to trust him this time.
くそ、僕はなんてお人よしなんだ。
Slightly nervous, I squinted my eyes halfway shut to protect myself from seeing anything too quickly or too clearly. And then I clicked the link.
なんだこれ。
It was a document written in English with a bunch of strange diagrams on the lower half. Part of it looked like a human face. The headline read, United States Patent. I knew that much at least. In other words, this was...
アメリカの特許。
VR 技術を知っているか？すでに実際にテストは成功している。ある研究チームが特許を取得済みだ。
It was real. I then went to open one of the two text files that come bundled with it. One of them had a series of news articles that seemed to mention the patent, all of which were translated into Japanese. One said that the Psychophysiology Research Laboratory of America's Victor Chandria University was currently researching a groundbreaking invention known as VR, visual rebuilding. As the goal of the research was primarily for healthcare, it had been gaining the attention of visually impaired people from all over the world. It was groundbreaking technology that enabled people who were blind from birth to see the scenery in front of them through video cameras and other imaging devices. To put it simply, this was done by converting signals, the ones that composed the image data that the video camera received, into the only signal the brain could recognize, electrical signals known as nerve impulses. These are then transported to the brain via the optic nerve. There had already been successful tests, and the patent had already been registered.
特許。本当に認められてる。
So, did that mean what Senna had said wasn't just some chuny delusion? I gulped, then went to open the other text file. I began reading. Presidential Documents, Memorandum of March 27th, 1997. Strengthen protections for human subjects of classified research. The agencies shall jointly propose to prohibit waiver of informed consent for classified research, part of it said. The agencies shall jointly propose to prohibit waiver of informed consent for classified research. Informed consent. To agree to any form of contract under the condition of being provided the correct information. In Japan, it is primarily used in the medical field. A physician explains the treatment to the patient truthfully, in detail, and in an easily understood manner. This includes the definition of the treatment, as well as its side effects, success rate, risks, cost, alternative treatments, etc. Once the patient fully understands these, they are able to provide consent. So don't inform them on what they're getting into. Beginning 1 year after the date of this memorandum, no agency shall conduct or support classified human research without having proposed and promulgated the common rule, said another. The document was then signed at the bottom by William J. Clinton, the second time his name has appeared in this game, and closed with the White House, Washington, March 27th, 1997. I was wondering why there was a suspicious white stain on the corner. A memorandum from the President of the United States. The contents sounded like the premise to a movie or something, so I never would have thought it was actually real. I went to check the original document via the URL. Even I could read English for the most part. Despite how I might have looked, I was a lot smarter than those docunes that went to school every day. The actual contents written in the document were the same as the translated text.
ということは
Senna's words echoed in the back of my mind.
ある意図的な情報を神経パルスへコンバートすることが可能なら、人の五感すべて、さらには人の意志そのものもコントロールできるんじゃないか。
It was starting to get somewhat difficult to understand at this point, but with what Senna had told me, combined with all the sources we'd found online that backed her up, it all sent chills down my spine. I had a feeling that something terrible was lurking within. But what confused me the most was what Senna's true intentions were in telling me all this. Did it have anything to do with me? The part about being able to control people's free will definitely wasn't something I could dismiss as somebody else's problem. Because there was the possibility that I was a sleepwalker. On the day of the third new-gen incident, the crucifixion, I had been told that I'd been posting in a chat room as Shogun. Apparently, I'd posted from @cafe too, but I had no memory of any of it. And not only that, but I had absolutely no memory of Rimi too. We'd been classmates for over a year, and we'd been close enough to hang out on multiple occasions, yet I had no memory of any of it. Maybe I had done all those things while I was being manipulated by some other being. Besides, I was terrible at talking to 3D girls to begin with, so there was no way I would be close to a cute girl like Rimi normally. No, I was thinking too hard about this. At the very least, I knew the chat thing was just one of Yua's delusions. Shogun was a separate entity from me. He was trying to entrap me, and it didn't go beyond that. This was true regardless of whether or not he had actually been the old man in the wheelchair that had appeared in front of me and that had appeared in front of 107. Maybe Senna too was one of Shogun's underlings. Not this shit again. Maybe she was just trying to deceive me. Don't just blindly accept everything without questioning it. Don't trust a suspicious girl you don't actually know. Senna and Yua were both of the same breed. That's how it should go, right, Seiratan? Whoosh! Back to Yua. The only sound present in the room was the distinct clacking of a keyboard. There's a picture of a person. I can't tell if that's Yua herself or a relative. It would be pretty weird to have a framed photo of just yourself facing you on your camera, facing you on your desk, unless you're just a major narcissist. Kusunoki Yua's thin, supple fingers. Very much needed to know what kind of fingers she had. Oh yeah, your thin, supple fingers. Moved as if they were dancing, her gaze fixed on the monitor all the while. Her touch typing was effortless. Her touch typing was effortless, and she'd made next to no typos. She was writing an email. A very long one at that. Yua had been writing for almost half an hour, endlessly deliberating over the contents of the email and making frequent revisions as she continued to type. Suddenly, her fingers stopped moving. With a small, pained sigh, she abruptly pressed and held down the backspace key. The cursor that was lit up on the monitor began scrolling leftward at high speed. All of the long sentences she had written so far disappeared near instantaneously as the cursor traveled across the screen. When all of the contents had been erased, Yua took hold of the Garo Froggy stuffed animal lying on her bed and hugged it tightly to her chest. This was a habit that Yua had developed recently. If she did not hug something in this way, she would be faced with unbearable anxiety. Burying her chin in the stuffed animal, Yua sighed once again and shook her head softly.
私に勇気をください。
Murmuring softly to no one in particular, Yua's expression stiffened. With the stuffed animal resting on her lap, she returned her hands to the keyboard. Within the monitor, each letter she typed in a fluid manner was quickly displayed in sequence. Compared to the one she had erased just moments before, this email was far more short and simple. It only served to provide the bare necessities of what she needed to convey. When she finished writing, Yua hesitated for a moment, and then she resolutely clicked on the send icon.
送っちゃった。
Before she could stop it from going through, the email had already been sent in the blink of an eye. Yua squeezed the Garo Froggy sitting on her lap tightly, and continued to stare at the monitor in front of her for over an hour. Although she had not been expecting one, there was no sign of a reply at all. Excuse me for a sec, I just need some water. Okay, all good. There I was, in my beloved room 37. As I sank down into the recliner, I started chewing on my nails in an attempt to distract myself from my irritation. There was a reason why I'd come to that cafe 2 days in a row, yesterday and today. 2 nights ago, after Grim, Shiho, and I had found out that what Senna had said was true, I'd received an email from Yua. In it, she'd insolently said that she wanted to talk to me one more time. Fuck off, I'd wanted to tell her. What the hell did she mean she wanted to talk? After deceiving me like that? I had nothing to say to her. Even if I did, she'd probably just come up with some new fancy way to trap me when I went to see her. As if I could risk that. It was true that I wasn't used to talking to girls. This is why I'd been so happy back when Yua was hitting on me. And yet, the harlot had been toying with me behind my back. And on top of that, she'd come up with all those insane delusions. Even I had delusions, sure, but I never bothered anyone else with them. That girl assaulted me with her schizo BS that treated me like I was the new gen culprit. I can never forgive her for what she'd done to me. Never. So, I'd ignored her email, but there had still been one thing that concerned me. In her email, she said that she was going to come to my base, and I knew for a fact that she knew my address. That was why I decided to take refuge in that cafe, despite it not being a school day. If I had the option, I would have brought my D-sword as a protection charm, but unlike Senna, I didn't have the courage to walk down Center Guy with it. At any rate, spending almost half a day in an internet cafe was fairly tiring. The recliners were comfortable, and it was equipped with showers, but I still couldn't fully relax like I could at my base. And then the biggest problem of all. Satan wasn't here! After 2 days spent holed up in the cafe, I realized just how much the mere presence of Seraton helped me. I wanted to hurry up and get back to my base as soon as possible. But going back late at night would mean the date would change. And by that time, the last train would already be gone. I figured that Yua most likely wouldn't be waiting for me anymore by then. I had to stick around for another 4 hours before the clock would strike midnight. I was sure time would go by a lot faster if I played ESO. Ugh. I moved my gaze over to the PC monitor. My second character, Liselot, was standing there aimlessly, not moving. When are your characters not?
お前の見ている景色は本物か?
It's time for Liselot to become real! Senna's words came to mind. More than half of what she'd said was true. The only thing I couldn't find a source for was the part where she was talking about controlling even people's wills and bodies. Maybe that part was just a delusion of hers. Mixing in just a few lies with the truth was a clever and effective way to scare people, especially with threats. Even though my reasonable side knew all of that, I couldn't help but feel scared as I thought about all the strange, inexplicable phenomena that had been plaguing me over the past few weeks. In a daze, I looked at Liselot on the screen.
リーゼロって、お前の見ている景色は本物か?
No, Takumi, it is a video game. I am being controlled by you. Yes, this is my voice. I have a very, very, very deep voice. This is what happens when you make us level 50, Takumi. Keeping my voice low to avoid being overheard, I'd whispered that absent-mindedly. I thought about something like this several times in the past. The world I was looking at right now, Basilard, was the world that Liselot lived in. It might have been real for her, but from my perspective, it was fake. Which meant that the world I lived in was seen as fake from the point of view of the person controlling me. Yes, Takumi, your world is fake. However, just as Liselot couldn't perceive me as a higher being, I also couldn't perceive the person controlling me as a higher being. I wondered if Liselot was thinking the same things that I was thinking. At the very least, she couldn't move on her own. I had to interfere in order for her to move. So, what about me? Maybe I, too, couldn't get up from this recliner without the interference of the person controlling me. Get up, Takumi! Get up! Get up, man! I'm telling you, get up! Get up! Get up out of your chair. Get out of your chair. Go outside. Touch some grass. Meet some girls. Just stop playing your freaking MMO and just get a life. Come on, man. Come on. I'm willing it right now. Are you gonna do it? Are you gonna do it, Takumi? Come on. Come on. Get up. Yes! I have successfully made a man get up out of a chair. This is peak game design. To test this, I tried to stand up. I did it with ease. After that, I tried sitting down. It took no effort. I didn't tell you to sit down. I told you to go outside. This sequence of events, was it really of my own volition? Apparently so, because you only listened to half of that. Or was it the result of someone's interference? I had no way of knowing.
Eh?
I heard the sound of the partition door to the private room being opened behind me. And at the same time, I felt someone come in. Startled, I turned around. It's Yua! Hello there, Yua jump scare. Kusunoki, Yua! I was so terrified that I was about to scream, anime girl jump scare. But Yua's hand quickly covered my mouth. Her hand was hot. Okay, Yoshikage Kira. And the scent of Yua's sweat infiltrated my nose.
黙って声を出さないで出さないって約束してくれるよね
Why do you just do this thing of reaffirming your point 4 times?
しないなんて言わないよね約束してするでしょ
5 times, maybe.
するの
6,
お願い
7. Delusion time. Okay, so negative. Time to trip balls around you. In this small private room, the only way was blocked out by Yua. The next thing I knew, my shoulders were being held down with such incredible force, I couldn't even get up from the seat. AKA regular strength, but Takumi's just that weak, apparently. Yua's cold gaze pierced through me at point-blank range. I couldn't help but look away, and my eyes fell on the 3 Garo froggies attached to the bag she was carrying on her shoulder.
いい声を出さないで
Yua's hand slowly started to release me. I tried to scream, but my mouth was quickly covered once again. I could barely breathe.
どうして声を出すの
Because you're covering my mouth in a cubicle! Actually, does this count as a cubicle? I'm not too sure.
約束したのにしたよねしたって言って
Keep
した
reaffirming.
でしょ
5,
したよ
6. Yua's grip strength wasn't normal. Keeping her hand clamped over my mouth, she forcefully tightened her grip on my chin. My fear reached its peak, and my knees started to tremble. I could no longer do anything but nod frantically at Yua's near inaudible words, each one sounding as if they didn't have a single shred of emotion behind them. So, there's some delusions where there seems to be some kind of cut, and then like a transition or whatever, and then it's clear, obviously a delusion. But when that doesn't happen, the scene just seems to transition naturally. So I kinda gotta wonder, like, if I picked neutral, would that have been like the actual delusion or something? Yeah. I finally made Yua weaken the grip she had on my chin, but she didn't let go like she had before. Damn, the saxophonist just died. Damn it, this bitch was an actual bona fide stalker. I never would have thought that she'd show up here. Now, the more I thought about it, the more I realized I should have totally predicted it. I remembered that I'd actually seen her here before, on the day we'd first met. She'd been peeking at me from the neighboring room 36. It It's pointless to have taken shelter here. How could I have been so careless?
ごめんなさい。
What? As if to avoid being overheard by anyone around her, Yua whispered to me quietly, and her tone of voice reverted to her usual timid one. It was like she had two personalities or something. This girl was insane.
驚かせちゃいましたよね。でも西条くんとお話しするにはこうするしかなかったんです。
She looked genuinely sorry. Crazily enough, I almost felt guilty just by looking at her. She was an amazing actor.
昨日あなたの家に行ったんですけどいませんでしたよね。夜まで待ってたんですけど。でも私を避けようとする西条くんの気持ちはよくわかります。私西条くんのこと騙してたわけだし。
If you acknowledge that, then just stay away from me. I have nothing to say to any of Shogun's underlings. Anyone who traps a weak person like me is a demon.
でもお願いです。一つだけ言わせてください。これ以上あなたが傷つくのもあなたが不幸になるのもあなたのせいで不幸になる人が出るのも見たくないんです。
What was she talking about? She was talking as if she knew everything about me. Despite the fact we hadn't even spent 24 hours together. Just what the hell did this girl actually know about me? Was this just another one of her signature batshit insane delusions? A shudder ran through me, and I started flailing my arms and legs. But even so, Yua didn't let go. If this went on for much longer, this girl might actually kill me. Had Shogun given up on trying to trap me and had just sent Yua as an assassin instead? I don't want to die. I don't want to die. I don't want to die.
ごめんなさい。お願いだから静かにしてください。話はすぐ終わりますから。
The tone of her voice was meek, but the power behind Yua's hands she held me down was so strong. Even if I tried to resist, she wouldn't budge an inch. I couldn't believe that such slender hands could be so powerful.
西条くん。
Yua inched her face closer and closer to mine. I desperately turned my head away. She gonna, kiss him or something to make him quiet?
もう
That was when I noticed Yua's hands were trembling. Or was it just that my hands were shaking so much it made it look like hers were too? While I pondered that, something unbelievable came out of her mouth. It was one of those tongues like an alien, with a little mouth on it. She was a xenomorph all along.
人を殺すのはやめてください。
I'm sorry, what? What?
自覚がないんですね。でもそれも私には理解できます。西条くんに自覚があるはずないから。
Knowing what?
あなたは
Yua's eyes shone with sorrow. Even though she had been staring at me intently until now, she suddenly cast her eyes downward.
DID 多重人格なんです。
I had multiple personalities. Yes, Takumi, I am your alter.
最初はあなたのこと警察に突き出すつもりでした。
Despite how confused I was, Yua continued to talk.
それが無理ならこの手でとも思ってました。だけどあなたのこと調べていくうちにあなたも苦しんでるんだって分かって。
She's saying she has DID too? I mean, I suspected that might be the case, but still. The eyes behind Yua's glasses once again took hold of me. They pleaded with me. No matter how hard I tried to see it as something else, I couldn't see her as anything other than genuinely worried about me. And that horrified me.
私あなたを助けたい。
This girl's delusions were getting out of control. What she was saying was totally insane. Or was it? Was it really insane?
だから病院に行きましょう。
I didn't truly know myself, understand myself. I had posted in a chat room under the handle Shogun without knowing it. Even though I had no memory of it, I had become friends with a girl named Rimi. It wasn't just me sleepwalking. It wasn't some higher being controlling me. Maybe the person controlling me from inside my head literally was inside my head. I wasn't me. I wasn't me. I was a different personality. I had multiple personalities. My head hurt. A throbbing, stabbing pain ripped through it. That wasn't possible. The entire thing was bullshit. Who would ever believe that? It too was yet another one of Yua's delusions. She was my enemy. She was impeding my way of life. She was trying to trap me. She was trying to destroy my mind. Even the hospital itself was under Shogun's reign. The only person I trusted, Dr. Takashina, had disappeared in such a sudden, inexplicable manner. For the record, I totally expect Dr. Takashina to be like the villain or something, just because that's typically how it goes in these. You have like one middle-aged doctor guy or whatever, and then they end up being evil. No matter how short their screen time is. Shogun must have made him disappear. If I did what Yua said, he'd make me disappear too. I don't believe her. It's not true. It's not true, 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 it's not true. I was stuck in my own head. I shoved Yua off me with every ounce of strength I could muster. Kill! Slamming into the wooden sliding door behind her, Yua slumped down to the floor with a Grimace milkshake in hand. Damn it, Yua, I told you not to drink that. I'm gonna have to dispose of the body before they think I did it. Finally freed from Yua's grasp, I grabbed my bag, stepped over Yua's body, and made for the exit. Still crumpled on the floor, Yua grabbed my ankle. Her hair was disheveled, and her glasses were falling off her face, but she made no effort to fix them. Seeing her clinging so desperately to me terrified me so much, a pathetic scream escaped from my mouth. She was my enemy, one of Shogun's underlings. I won't be deceived. I won't be deceived by you ever again. I shouted as loud as I could, and Yua quickly let go of me. In that window, I bolted out of the room. I tore a 5,000 yen bill from my wallet and slammed it down on the counter in front of the dumbfounded receptionist. And then, without getting my change, I burst onto the elevator leading outside. I nearly tumbled out of the elevator as I burst outside. The sun was already setting. I examined my surroundings. There were people everywhere. Run. It doesn't matter where, just run. My base wasn't safe. She was following me. I had no idea where to even go, but I started running anyway. Thinking that Yua might get off another elevator at any moment now, that she might threaten me again in that ice-cold voice of hers. I didn't want to stay there for even a second longer. I looked behind me over and over again, but I kept on running regardless of what I saw. The pedestrians were all in the way. I bumped into a businessman and a Dokyun-esque high school girl. When that happened, I was showered with curses. But I still didn't stop. I just kept on running. It hurt to breathe. I'd picked some random-ass road without thinking, and I still had no idea where I was running. I stopped to catch my breath. I checked the scenery around where I was standing. I was in front of Maruichi, which meant I could take shelter in Miyashita Park. I would take a quick break there, then I would run somewhere farther away. If I went to Yoyogi Park, there would be plenty of places to hide, so I could spend the night there. I couldn't help but wonder what was behind me. I didn't see any signs of Yua. However, I wouldn't be surprised if she appeared in front of me at any second now, complete with the most terrifying, demonic expression I'd ever encountered. My instincts screamed at me. Run! You need to run! Exhausted, I weakly sat down on the pavement at the Miyashita Park overpass. The great King of Terror has chosen this city. I'd run way too much. My throat was dying. I wanted to drink a nice ice-cold cola, but I didn't see any vending machines nearby. Your vending machines give it to you cold? Man, Japan truly is better. Maybe I was okay now that I'd come this far. No, I couldn't be careless. I still had to be fully aware of my surroundings. There should only be a few people in Miyashita Park at night. Or at least that was what I had expected, but much to my surprise, that wasn't the case. There was a businessman walking briskly through the park, likely using it as a shortcut. An older man on a bench messing with his cell phone. Several homeless people sitting around absent-mindedly. And lastly, a person wearing blue talking to one of them. A police officer. Delusion time! Delusion time! Alright. Positive or neither? Well, you know my modus operandi by now, so I'm just gonna pick neither. The police. I gulped audibly. I remembered that I'd been questioned by a pair of detectives a while ago. I hadn't heard a single thing from them since. They'd said they were going to guard the area surrounding my base, but there was no sign of them following me through on it. Although, according to Misumi-kun, they'd apparently come to investigate Suime. Those two detectives, what were their names again? I couldn't remember. Bon and Suwa. Jeez, Takumi, you need to You need to get better at learning the names of people you've only talked to once. Very important life skill. I told both of them of the truth about what I had witnessed at the scene of the crucifixion, but in hindsight, I couldn't help but think that they'd clearly been looking at me with suspicion as I did. Right as I thought that, the policeman who had been talking to the homeless man glanced at me. Or, at least, that's how it felt. Oh no. You're overthinking it, I thought to myself, but I still tried to follow the police officer's movements closely. But maybe I was being too obvious, because the cop looked over once again, and it was clearly directed at me this time. I was the first one to look down. I doubted that I could survive a staring contest against a cop. Had he looked at me for a reason? Or had he just looked at me because I had looked at him? Which was it? I didn't know. It could have been either one of those reasons. After waiting a few moments, I looked up and glanced at the officer once again. The cop was still looking at me, so I hurriedly turned my head away in a panic. This was bad. I was acting way too suspicious. With you already hunting me down, I couldn't afford to have the police coming after me too.
Takumi Nishijo, you are under arrest for suspicion of staring at a police officer.
I had to get out of this somehow. I wiped the cold sweat away from my forehead. Still sitting down, I took a textbook out from my bag. I pretended to start reading it. Then I casually looked over to see what the policeman was doing. The police officer brought a black object, likely a police radio, to his mouth. Was he reporting something?
There's this dude staring at me. I don't like it. Send the entire department.
From where I was sitting, the sound of cars passing by on the street below me was so loud I couldn't hear his voice at all. This couldn't have gotten any worse. This was what I felt like. That was what I felt like. Maybe I should get out of here, I thought to myself. But it was too late for that. If I did anything careless, it would be suicide. If you pretended to read a book, you would have to keep up that pretense for a certain amount of time, or else you'd look suspicious. I had to keep up the act until the cops stopped looking at me. But right as I thought that, I realized that figure who'd previously looked like they were heading for the park was instead walking straight toward the policeman. Upon looking at them with the corner of my eye, my eyes shot open. Yua! She couldn't have possibly come at a worse time. Cold sweat seeped not only from my forehead, but from my entire body. This was bad. This was really, really bad. It didn't look like Yua had noticed me yet, so I prayed that she would just walk away without doing so. But my prayers went unanswered. After all, the policeman's gaze was still trained on me. It was only natural that Yua, who had ran up to the cop and said something to him, would follow his gaze and lock on to me. I clicked my tongue, tucked my textbook back into my bag, and partially got up. I took a position that would allow me to bolt at any time. Yua and the policeman exchanged a few words, and then they both looked at me. Don't look at me. Yua then blatantly pointed at me. She was explaining something to the cop.
This man shoved me over while I was drinking my Grimace milkshake. Tried to claim that the milkshake was poison or something. Can't believe this mofo.
You fucking bitch. You've got to be kidding. You've got to be fucking kidding. This felt like it was enough to make even a level-headed person like myself completely snap.
You're You're headed alright, Takumi. I wouldn't say level. Like, chaos-headed NoAH!
You was reporting me to the police. And not only that, but she was telling him that nonsensical, delusional bullshit that she pulled out of her goddamn ass. The idea that I was the new gen killer. It may be enough to satisfy you, but just put yourself in my shoes. How would you feel if you got falsely accused? My cries obviously had no way of reaching her. The policeman who had listened to Yua's story began to approach me. His shoulders squared. I stood up. Shit! I was trapped. She was going to ruin my life. What do I do? What should I do? Should I just tell the policeman the truth? It was all a delusion she came up with? I didn't do anything. I was a model citizen. There was no way. That would never work. In this day and age, when given the choice between an otaku freak like me and a wholesome high school girl like Yua, it was fairly obvious who the cops were more likely to believe. There was no way they'd ever take anything I had to say seriously. That was why I had to run away right this instant. The second I had thought that, I turned on my heel and broke into a sprint. I crossed the overpass leading toward the stairs to Meiji Dori. When I got there, I looked behind me and saw
The exact same thing, because apparently I have only moved a single foot. Still got that guy holding the Great King of Terror has chosen this city sign.
When I got there, I looked behind me and saw a policeman sprinting after me. And not only that, but strangely enough, the man sitting on the bench and even one of the homeless people were right behind him. You've got to be kidding. Had you had the police on her side the entire time? Had Miyashita Park been full of undercover detectives the entire time? I had no idea what to do anymore. I had been caught completely off guard. It was so incredibly unreasonable that I felt like I was about to cry. I hadn't done anything. I hadn't done anything at all. The police were being jerked around by her. This was insane. Wiping away my tears, I rushed down the stairs. I ran down Meiji Dori, heading straight for the station without looking at anyone or anything. I passed under a pedestrian overpass and ran up the stairs leading to it. There were people everywhere. All of them were blocking my path. I felt as if each and every one of them were deliberately getting in my way, like they all had some form of malicious intent. Everyone looked like they could be cops. I was this close to completely panicking. I looked behind me and saw someone sprinting after me. I caught a glimpse of a person cutting through the crowd just like I was. It was one of the people that I had seen in the park. I didn't know who it was. It didn't matter. They were following me regardless. I was horrified. If I got caught, my life would be over. I would be falsely accused of a crime I didn't commit, sentenced to death, locked up in a high-security prison for decades and decades, and then after I finished enduring that living hell, I'd finally be told, "Alright then, your number's up. Time for you to die." I didn't want that. I wouldn't be able to handle that. I didn't want to live like that. Even if I somehow managed to prove that it was a false accusation, once I was branded as a criminal, it would never go away. Everyone around me would look at me suspiciously for the rest of my life. Unfortunately, from what I've heard, that seems to be how it works in Japan. I didn't want that. I hadn't even done anything. I turned onto a small street that was completely deserted and kept running as hard as I could. But I had been running ever since I'd left At Cafe, and I still hadn't been able to catch my breath. My lungs were begging for oxygen. My legs were shaking with fatigue. I hated myself for not exercising more, but it was too late for that regardless. Finally, I couldn't run anymore, So I doubled over and gripped my knees with my hands. The place where I'd stopped looked familiar. The distinctive red brick walls paired with the gigantic backlit sign that read Gigantus. I'd been here before, with Misumi-kun. We'd come to see a Phantasm concert, or to be more specific, see their lead singer, Thess. But now, the place was quiet and empty, with the only other light being from the vending machine dimly illuminating my surroundings. Frustrated that my breathing still hadn't gone back to normal, I looked back toward the road I had sprinted down. The street was dimly lit and narrow. As the Toyoko Line train slowly passed by directly above me, despite the striking glow of the light leaking down from the windows of the train, even it didn't reach the streets below. I stared at the road in front of me. I wondered if I had managed to lose them being Yua and the police. It was too dark for me to tell for sure.
私についてきて。
Suddenly, I heard a woman's voice in my ear, and I let out a pathetic scream before toppling to the ground.
Emo girl jump scare. Or to be more specific, goth girl jump scare.
It was Fess, dressed in a flashy outfit that she would wear to a concert. As she quietly looked down at me from the darkness, the eruptive energy that she'd given off while she was on stage was now completely absent, making her appear almost transient, like she might disappear at any moment. Because of the darkness, I couldn't see her expression. As my mind wandered in my surprise, Fess gently held out her hand to me.
だって、早く。
Her tone of voice was dispassionate, but I could tell that she wasn't going to let me argue with her. Still holding out her hand, Fess slowly craned her neck, then narrowed her eyes as if she had seen through the darkness.
逃げないと。
Why? Did she know that I'd been running from Yua and the police? I was freaked out for a sec, but I knew that right now, salvation was almost within my grasp. That was why, as if I was clinging to my only hope left, I took her hand. Her hand was cold to the touch. Right as I stood up, Fess started running. As I was already utterly exhausted, I felt incredible resentment, but I knew that if it hadn't been for Fess, I would have never been able to stand up again. The police likely would have caught up with me. I still wanted to quench my dying thirst in some way, but I knew I couldn't afford to. Fess pulled me by the hand and led us forward. We entered a narrow alleyway and made turn after turn at various intersections. I had no idea where I was running to. I wasn't even familiar with the layout of Shibuya, so I had no choice but to follow Fess the entire time. I nearly entertained the idea that this could be another trap set by Shogun, but I shook the thought from my head. Even if Fess was another one of Shogun's underlings, there would be nothing I could do about it. My legs were heavy with lactic acid, and I was starting to feel lightheaded, probably because my brain hadn't been getting enough oxygen due to all the running. I was this close to crying out and saying that I couldn't run anymore. In fact, I may or may not have said it several times unconsciously. I forgot how F is pronounced in German. Das Find und... Yeah, I noticed that graffiti there earlier, but it's cut off, so I can't read it. My German's pretty limited anyways. But even so, Tess never once looked back at me. She just kept on going. Before I knew it, I found myself on a road where the Shuto Expressway ran overhead. Shibuya Station was only a little bit farther away, but there were barely any people around.
I'm sure that they'll have trouble figuring out where a goth girl and a little dweeb are running off to.
Without a shred of hesitation, Fess started to head down the stairs that led into the gaping maw of the underground. Fessitation. Upon reaching the bottom of the stairs, she finally came to a stop.
Well, this place is new.
I let go of Fess's hand and doubled over on the stairs, gasping for breath. I wondered how much running I had done today. I didn't think I'd ever exercised so much in my entire life.
You're telling me, bud. Oh, that's a new expression.
For a while, the only sounds present in the dim, dreary underground tunnel were the sounds of me and Fess breathing. I looked up at the entrance where we had just come down from, but there was no sign of our pursuers. I guess that meant we'd managed to escape somehow. That aside, this was my first time learning that this underground passage even existed. On top of that, even though it was fairly close to the station, there wasn't a single person passing through it. One of the fluorescent lights that illuminated the tunnel was on its last legs, flickering on and off without end. There was the faint smell of rotting garbage in the air.
You know, last time you said that, you found a guy who had been crucified to hell with a bunch of stakes.
Or, well, supposedly, because it seems like the actual crime scene wasn't actually that gruesome.
Perhaps it, too, was another delusion.
It was a place that symbolized the underground side of Shibuya. If someone were to attack me here, even if I screamed as loud as I could, it may not even reach the outside. This was not a place I would ever want to come alone to.
Delusion time, delusion time. Alright. So, neither. Jeez, talk to me, I know your brain's low on O2, but that doesn't mean you gotta start hallucinating. Or delusionating.
Still breathing heavily, I slowly examined Fess's profile.
She had a pretty weak chin.
She was a charismatic songstress who captivated the youth of Shibuya. People even called her a prophet. And now, that very same Fess was here alone with an otaku freak piece of shit like me. I wasn't sure what to make of it. Her forehead was beading with sweat, with several drops running down her cheeks. She was wiping it off with the back of her hand. Her... God damn it, talk to me.
Her breasts, exposed through her camisole, rose and fell with every breath she took. God damn it. A glimpse providing healthy eroticism in an atmosphere overflowing with ennui. Whatever that means.
Moe didn't do it justice. The best and only possible word befitting of her was erotic.
How the hell are you seeing anything through that?
She was... oh my gosh. She was tall, had a great body, and she looked like a model. I was sure she was popular with the guys, too. Wait, what kind of stupid shit was I thinking about? Did I forget the situation I was in?
追われてたわね。
え、うん。
警察。
I nodded in response. It wasn't just the police. Yuo was following me too. but I was too exhausted to tell her that.
私も同じ。
Huh? What was that supposed to mean?
私が書いた歌詞となんとかって呼ばれてる事件との関係についてだって。しつこく聞かれたわ。
New Gen. The lyrics that Fess had written matched up with that string of incidents. That was why all of her sheep wouldn't shut up about... That was why all her sheep wouldn't shut up with all those rumors. They'd been saying that she was a prophet.
私、疑われてるみたい。
Is the New Gen criminal? I thought the same thing back when I'd first heard her lyrics. Hell, I'd even thought that Fess herself was Shogun. But considering the fact she'd saved me, she probably wasn't. Putting all that aside, I wondered why Fess was even here. Why Fess was even there. Her saving me must have just been a coincidence. Yeah, it had to be. I mean, I'd been right in front of the concert venue, so there was probably just another concert today.
君が追われてるのはなぜ？何か悪いことでもしたの？
作られた。あの女、僕のこと作ったんだ。ニュージェネの犯人にされる。
You was trying to set me up. God damn it. Shogun and that girl were going to ruin my life.
そう。容疑者候補ね。私たち。
Why was she laughing?
僕は無実だ。
I yelled out frantically. My voice reverberated loudly throughout the underpass. But I couldn't stop now.
事件を目撃しただけだ。証拠品を勝手に持ち帰っちゃったけど、それだけ。僕殺してない。
それなら。
Fess whispered, returning to her original dispassionate voice.
きっとそれは導きなのよ。大いなる存在による。
ANOTHERFUCKINGMENTALCASE. What does it spell? Another fucking mental case. Another goddamn Junibyo.
君の見たものが事実だったか幻だったかは些細なこと。
That horrible scene. Was there any possibility they had all just been an illusion? But it all felt so real.
君が今抱いている苦しみや怒りは必要なものだったということよ。
What was she saying? I was utterly dejected. I had been slightly suspicious back at the concert, and I turned out to be right. Fess really was a total schizo freak. I say there's a fine line between genius and insanity, but this is pushing it.
だから早く見つけて剣見つけて。
I was taken aback. That's what Fess had told me back when we'd met at school. If you do, you'll be granted salvation. She'd said this before. Aside from the police, what scared me the most was Shogun and his underlings. I had no idea why, but they were all trying to trap me, and they all clearly had malicious intent. In order to save myself from them, in order to protect myself, I needed...
ディソード。
そうよ。
Fess's lips twisted into the shape of a smile.
勉強したみたいね。
それなら手に入れた。僕はディソードを持ってる。今家に。
知ってるわ。
she know?
見たから。君が渋谷のど真ん中を歩いていたのを大きなおもちゃを抱きしめて恥ずかしそうにしてたわね。
Was she talking about the day I bought the D sword? Oh, that's insane, me. Fuck my life. Wait a minute. Wait, she just said?
おもちゃ
The smile had already disappeared from Fess's face. She glanced at my face and let out a small sigh. Her sense of ennui, her aloofness. Oh yeah, that's what it means. Was so pure, it made me feel uneasy.
偽物だと思うわ。あなたの買った剣は。
No shit. I wasn't even that surprised. I'd expected it, honestly. The sword I'd bought was way too cheap compared to the one Senna had. It didn't even glow. Besides, the idea that a sword that would supposedly bring me salvation was being sold for 10,000 yen alongside sex toys was the least anime thing possible. Unless you're Suda 51. So, yeah, I wasn't surprised. Instead, I felt a furious surge of anger well up inside me. Anger at the gloomy shopkeeper who tricked me. Anger at myself for being so pathetic that I'd be tricked that easily. Anger at Fess for saying nothing meaningful in the slightest instead of just giving me a straight answer.
じゃあ
I stood up and moved closer to Fess. Normally, I would have never done something like that, but I was desperate. I'd been being chased by Yua and the police only a few moments ago, and I was absolutely terrified. Not only that, but in the past month or so, I'd experienced countless bad thoughts. It was all too much for me. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to get my hands on a sword so I could get back to my peaceful way of life.
教えてよ理想のどうやって手に入れるのか
Fess's expression stiffened, and then she turned to me.
見て。
She suddenly thrust the palm of her right hand out in front of me. Stopping me from coming any closer, Fess curled her right hand into a fist, and upon swinging her hand behind her in a motion resembling a back fist, together with a sound akin to that of glass breaking, the empty space cracked, and then it shattered. My eyes went wide. I was speechless. Fess stared at me. Her expression had not changed in the slightest. Within the cracks of the shattered space was a deep darkness spreading wide. With her hand buried between the fissures, Fess pulled her hand back toward her with tremendous force. Anime Weapon Summon! And now, within that hand, was a giant sword.
ソード
The fissures in that empty space were repaired in an instant. The cracks disappeared as if nothing had even happened. It all happened in the span of a few seconds. Had that been a magic trick? Or was what I was seeing just a delusion? It was too far removed from reality. I couldn't believe what had just happened right in front of me. This was a fantasy. A fantasy anime.
この剣は命運を握るもの。
That sword. It was the same one she'd been wielding at the concert. The same one I'd mistaken for a microphone stand. Its shape almost looked like a battleship ripped straight from a sci-fi anime.
この剣は嘆きを収束させたもの。
There was no straight lines to be found on it, and yet it appeared incredibly sharp, incredibly beautiful, incredibly sinister.
この剣は超越した場所に干渉するためのもの。
And that if you so much as touched it, your fingers would be severed from the bone.
超越した場所って。
I was mesmerized. Her D-sword utterly captivated me, which was why I'd asked her that without thinking.
異空間のようなもの。
Oh boy, info dump time. This was definitely an anime at this point.
同一次元上にあるもう一つの可能性、あるいは妄想。
A delusion.
言い方にあんまり意味はないわ。唯一確かなの。この剣もその領域に存在しているということ。
So, in other words, she was saying that her D-sword was a product of her delusions? Did that mean that the supernatural phenomena I'd seen before had also been delusions? Had they not been real?
そんなのありえない。
そう。
If it was a delusion, then why was I seeing Fess's sword right now?
言葉に引きずられてはダメよ。後ろを振り返ってみて。
I was baffled by Fess's request, but I complied anyway. Behind me was a flight of stairs, and on those stairs was Fess, wearing her school uniform. Fess was standing right behind me. Fess was also standing on the stairs right in front of me. Two of the same person, in the same place. Completely and utterly flustered, I relentlessly snapped back and forth between the two Fesses over and over again, comparing them. They were exactly the same, right down to their facial features, height, and hairstyles. The only differences were their clothes, and whether or not they were carrying a sword. They weren't twins or anything like that, and they didn't just look alike. They were one and the same.
これも君の妄想。
The two Fesses said that at the exact same time. My head started to hurt. What kind of insane phenomenon was this shit? What the hell was happening? As he walked cautiously through the narrow, trash-ridden streets of Maruyamacho. Banyasuji jammed one hand inside his pants pocket. Inside, he'd found a few dozen small coins.
先輩、貼り付けの現場に何があるっていうんすか？もう事件から2週間以上経ってるし、散々調べられた後っすよ。新しい証拠なんて出てきませんって。
His partner, Detective Suwa, had been walking behind him, grousing in an irritated voice for quite some time. I know you're the killer, Suwa. I know this is all you're doing! That was understandable, of course, as the job originally assigned to them had been to tail an important witness for the new gen cases, Nishijo Takumi. However, the two of them had abandoned their tailing mission, and had instead come to the scene of the third New Gen incident, colloquially known as the Crucifixion incident. Bon had decided to abandon their original task of tailing Nishijo Takumi, forcing the burden onto some other detective in the same jurisdiction. The rookie detective, Suwa, was not pleased by this.
やっぱまずいっすよ。尾行に戻りましょう。
The rookie detective had consistently been pushed around by his senior without any explanation, and he could not stand it. For that reason, he had been insistently trying to persuade Bon for a long time now. But to this, Bon only said,
いいから黙ってついてこいって。
He remained aloof and refused to heed his junior's perfectly sound arguments. Finally, they at last came across a narrow road, blocked off by yellow barricade tape. As Suwa let out the latest in his myriad of sighs, his cell phone began vibrating near his chest. He quickly took out his phone, which had been set to vibrate, assumed the look of a capable detective, and pressed the accept button.
座っす。はい。はい。
As he listened to Suwa's voice coming from behind him, Bon came to a stop in front of the barricade tape. Behind the tape was the crime scene. A deep darkness had settled over the area, just as it had when the crime had been committed. But now, there were no remaining traces of the incident, save for the barricade tape.
見失った？女か。やられたっすね。とりあえず、深センの家に戻ってほしいっす。はい。張り込んでてください。いやいや、大丈夫っすよ。責任はバン警部補が取るっすから。
Bon smiled wryly upon hearing that. Suwa could be surprisingly shrewd. Of course, Bon had no intention of placing the blame onto his subordinates, nor onto the detective he had placed in charge.
なるべく早くこっちも合流します。本当申し訳ないっす。お願いします。
Right as Suwa hung up the phone and returned his begrudging gaze to Bon, Bon ducked under the tape. Suwa had no choice but to reluctantly accompany him.
見失ったって？
尾行に気づかれたっす。直前にネットカフェで一騒動あったみたいっすし。
女っての？
岸本綾瀬っす。
お騒がせバンドの嬢ちゃんか。つながりは？
同じ学校の同じ学年っすね。
Oops.
他は今のところ特に。クラスメートでもないっす。
Bon brought a hand to his chin, savoring the rough texture of his stubble for a moment. After which, he took out several coins from his pocket and started counting them in the dark, one by one. Suwa stared at his eccentric senior with a puzzled look on his face.
何してるんすか？
よりによって5円玉だけありゃしねえ。そうだ、お前5円玉持ってねえか？
はあ。
Perplexed, Suwa took a 5-yen coin out from his wallet and held it out to Bon. However, instead of taking it straight away, Bon tore the bottom button off the shirt he was wearing. He then untied the thread fastened to the button.
先輩、ついに頭おかしくなったんすか？
生意気な口聞くようになったじゃねえか。
Bon chuckled and lightly whapped Suwa on the head. He then took the thread and weaved it through the hole in the center of the coin.
よし、お前にやらせてやるよ。
After pinching both ends of the thread with his fingers, Bon let the 5-yen coin hang down and handed it to his junior.
振り子っすか？
あ
Bond smiled mischievously.
あ、こいつが事件の重要なヒントを与えてくれるかもしれないよ。
マジっすか？バンさん、勘弁してほしいっすよ。そのために仕事をほっぽってここまで来たんすか？
Sua's tone was almost mournful. He'd been pushed around countless times by Bond before now, but this time, Bond had finally managed to utterly stump the rookie detective.
サイキック操作とかダウジングとか
Dowsing, a technique for locating groundwater, mineral deposits, or various other things by relying on the movement of a rod, pendulum, or other similar technology. One of the most popular methods is to use two-angled rods, typically in the form of L-shaped wires. The person who does the dowsing is called a dowser. It is widely believed that the human body has an internal magnet that reacts to underground water veins and other objects, and that this causes muscles to move unconsciously. The prevailing theory is that this is why dowsing rods appear as if they move by themselves.
その手のテレビでも見て影響を受けたんですね、先輩。
そういうお前も詳しいじゃね
いやー、まあ自分も見たは見たっすよ。先週のユーリ・ブライトマン。
Yuri Brightman.
ユーリ・ブライトマンっすよ。今話題になってるアメリカの超能力捜査官っす。
Psychic detective. Typically found in America, it is an investigator who uses psychic abilities such as clairvoyance in order to aid in solving crime. Often appears in Japanese media. However, despite the established title, such a position does not actually exist in America. The mainstream perception of psychic investigation is that it is extremely ineffective.
俺が見たのはそんなチラチラしたもんじゃないんだよ。どこかのお偉い大学教授が出ててだな。
でもテレビっすよね。
いちいち文句の多いやつだ。やってみりゃわかる。ほら、いいから吊るしてみろって。
When his senior issued that request, Sua did not have any room to refuse. His lips pursed in a sullen manner, but he reluctantly accepted the 5-yen coin. He pinched at the ends of the string and began to twirl it around in a circle, creating centrifugal motion. It was too dark for either of them to see clearly, so Bond flicked on a 100-yen cigarette lighter and used it as their source.
先輩ってタバコ吸いましたっけ？
10年以上前に禁煙してなんでだよ。
ライター持ってたっすか？
こういうこともあろうかと用意していたんだよ。
はは。で、これで何がわかるんです？
もっといろいろ動かしたり止めたりしてみろ。
Bond monitored the movement of the 5-yen coin intently. Bond's eyes were so intensely serious, Sua could no longer complain about this being a pointless excursion.
やっぱりな。そうわかるか？
何がっす
5円玉の動きだよ。さっきから少しだけ楕円を描いているような気がしねえか。
Using the thread as support, the dangling 5-yen coin was slowly revolving around in a circular motion. Sua cocked his head.
力の入れ方とかじゃないんすかね？
お前、楕円に回るように意識してやってんのか？
いや、結構適当に来るから。
もっと手を動かさねえようにやってるわ。
はあ。
Sua consciously tried to move his hand in a circular fashion, but no matter how hard he tried, the trajectory drawn by the 5-yen coin was always elliptical in shape.
意識的に違う形にしようとしてもできねえだろ。
Bond's face was full of pride. Suwa, on the other hand, was still not convinced, and continued relentlessly in his quest to try and change the motion of the pendulum.
まあ渋谷のどこでもこの現象が見られるわけじゃねえが、それでも十数箇所はここみてえな場所があるらしいぜ。
確かに不思議っすね。でもだから何なんす？
Bond looked up in satisfaction, put his lighter back in his pocket, then retrieved the hand fan that he had stashed between his belt and his pants.
お前、渋谷がなんでここまで若者を引きつけるか知ってるか
5円玉が楕円を描くからっすか？
Suwa thought that he was making a clever jab, but Bond nodded readily in response, calmly fanning his face all the while.
まあ、そういうことだ。
なぜこの渋谷という場所は若者たちをこんなにも引きつけると思う？
Okay, I should probably stop here for now. I know we're kind of in the middle of a thing, but I am going pretty long right now. I thought maybe I could get to the end of the chapter. Well, then again, I suppose next time I could just end up going straight into the next chapter, but we'll see what happens. So, have a good one, everyone. Bye.